What will happen in Westworld Season 2, Episode 10, the finale? What can we learn from the preview trailer? Hi everyone, this is Robert. Welcome to Deep Geek. I'd like to thank my patrons for making this video possible. If you'd like to support this channel or get access to some exclusive audio content, please do check out my Patreon page. And this is your spoiler warning if you're not up to speed with Westworld. Seriously, there is a lot in this trailer, and if you don't want to know what happens, click away now. This will be a big episode at an hour and a half long, and we can expect to see all of the major plot strands from this season coming together at the Valley Beyond. And we can also expect to see the various timelines start to stitch themselves together. For example, we will see how we get to the 2 weeks later timeline with Bernard waking up on the beach, but more about that in a moment. Let's start with Maeve. We last saw her lying wounded in the Mesa hub. Ford had unlocked her core permissions, which probably means that she has all of her powers back. Sure enough, we see her in this shot that we first saw in the Super Bowl trailer for Season 2, using the bulls as a weapon to help her escape the Mesa hub. It's a useful reminder that all the animals in Westworld are hosts too, so Maeve can control them too. But it looks like Lee, bless him, has tried to stage his own rescue attempt as well. He has gathered Maeve's old gang, Armistice, Hector and the rest, and they probably meet up with her while she is on her way out. And she definitely does make her way out, because we see her in Westworld proper. Of course, she will now be trying to get back to her daughter, who is now with the Ghost Nation, so she, like everyone else, as we'll see in a moment, will be heading to the Valley Beyond. At which point, let's switch to Charlotte Hale, who has worked out how to weaponize Clementine. Last episode, she, or her technician, extracted the key lines of coding from Maeve that allow her to control other hosts, and they implanted them in Clementine, showing that they could use her to make the hosts attack each other. In episode 10, they seem to be taking this to the logical next step, using Clementine as a weapon to turn the hosts on themselves. Here she is on a horse riding ahead of a Delos strike team and then riding through the hosts. Clearly Charlotte's plan is to turn the hosts on each other. But Maeve is there, and she seems to first try to stop Clementine with her powers, and when that doesn't work, just tells everyone to run. Maeve has a special bond with Clementine, so the way she is being used will cut her deep, but her priority this episode will remain finding her daughter, which means finding Akecheta and the Ghost Nation, who, in turn, are looking for the door to the real world. Moving to Dolores, she clearly starts the episode by mourning the loss of Teddy, but soon enough she encounters the Man in Black. These two have history, of course, but after a tense start they seem to recognise that they have a common cause. We've noted before on this channel how their two storylines in the latter part of Season 2 have been mirroring one another, and now they find themselves both having recently lost the person closest to them in tragic circumstances, and both on a path to the Valley Beyond. Their motives are not completely aligned. Dolores wants to use it as a weapon against her oppressors, and the Man in Black wants to destroy it, but they seem to find enough common ground to travel there together, at least, and they find ways in, their door. So far we have Dolores and the Man in Black going into the Valley Beyond structure, and Maeve, Clementine and Delos arriving to the outside, probably after William and Dolores went inside, because it's a long journey from the Mesa hub. But what about Bernard? Well, I suspect he may actually get there first. We see a couple of shots of him apparently heading towards it and then going in, at which point it's probably worth reminding ourselves of what is actually in the Valley Beyond. There's something called the Forge, which seems to be like the Cradle, but for all the human guessed mapped minds that have been harvested over the last 2 or 3 decades. So the Forge is a kind of matrix or database of human minds that are waiting to be mapped onto host bodies once the technology has been perfected. And it appears that, like the Cradle, hosts can enter it and walk around, experiencing it as a kind of second life. If you remember, all the scenes in the cradle were filmed in a wide-angle cinematic style with black bars along the top and bottom of the screen, and the showrunners seem to have chosen the same visual cues for scenes inside the forge, like this one. Bernard seems to go into the forge, as he did with the cradle, and so, when she gets there, does Dolores. As we might expect, James Delos is inside, his mapped mind being downloaded every now and then for a new experiment, but Logan is also there, and seems to join up with Dolores and Bernard. There are, incidentally, also a couple of shots in the trailer that look like they are from Logan's backstory, so perhaps we will see some of that too. But we should expect Logan in the Forge to be set against the idea of immortality through host-human hybrids. After all, that seems to be part of what led to his downward spiral into substance abuse. And there may be others here too. Anyone who visited the park or knew about the project and wanted in. So Emily, maybe, or even Charlotte or Strand. Also, these scenes seem to imply that the default version of the hosts are there too. The original Dolores and Teddy and so on from Sweetwater. The point here is not what actually happens within the Forge, but the chance to create hosts we thought were gone. For example, it looks like the original version of Teddy is saved in here. Could Dolores download him, bringing the original him back from the dead? Quite possibly, but this is speculation. The Forge seems to be immense inside. The trailer implies that there is a huge library, Sweetwater, these glass enclosures, and so on. My guess is that the library is the central information point that they are headed to. What we also have within the Forge are apparently copies of the original host's minds, and it would appear Ford. Ford has spent much of this season manipulating everyone to get into this position, telling Akecheta when he should act, taking control of Bernard, confounding Delos' efforts to regain control, and so on. So we will finally see his endgame. Given that he seems to have always been against the Delos research project, and in favour of the hosts surviving as a new species, I think we can expect to see him working here for the destruction of the Valley Beyond, and helping the hosts get to the mainland. And even with all this going on inside the Forge, it's possible that we are also seeing some things from inside the cradle. We hear Dolores' voice say, "Freeze all motor functions. Let's try again." Which seems to be a hark back to years ago, when she and Ford were making the new Bernard through fidelity tests in the cradle. But whatever is going on inside the facility seems to be time-limited, because let's not forget that this timeline will end with Bernard waking up on the beach looking dazed, a flooded Valley Beyond, and a lot of dead hosts. We can probably account for quite a few of the dead hosts by the fact that Clementine will make them turn on one another, but something dramatic must happen to flood the valley. And in the trailer we see a couple of things going on that are certainly potentially dramatic. First, we see water coming up from underground. This seems to answer the question of where the water came from for the flood, and it probably builds on a throwaway remark by Jonathan Nolan that the cradle was kept cool by water. Lots of water. Presumably the Forge works on a similar basis. There are massive servers that get very hot and need to be kept cool, so massive amounts of water. Credit to one of my patrons for that idea. Could Bernard's admission that he killed the floating hosts be based on the fact that he somehow caused the water to flood the valley? I think it's possible. But most intriguingly, there is this, a tear in the sky. My best guess is that this is caused by this projector thing. Now, there has been a lot of speculation about where Westworld is and how it maintains its microclimates. The burning hot deserts of Westworld seem to be only a few miles from the snows of Shogun World, for example. And the Mount Fuji we saw in the background of Shogun World seems invisible from Westworld. The most straightforward sci-fi-ish answer to this is biodomes. Could this ray be literally breaking down the barriers between worlds, creating a door? Could the drama of the last episode be that the valley is flooding just as Clementine is making the hosts turn on one another and a doorway is opening to the real world? Will it be a race against time to get out as many hosts as possible? Eventually, with many hosts dead and the valley flooded, we reach the point at which we started this season. Bernard waking up on a beach, dazed and confused, ready for the 2 weeks later timeline, or what we should probably now call the main timeline, because the other one has caught up. We see him going there in the trailer, leaving just one more mystery. Why he saw some things twice on the beach, and knew how people would end their sentences. My guess, and it is just a guess, is that in the forge, or possibly in the cradle, he ran through the simulation of what might happen next many times, so he knew how to get the best outcome. Think Doctor Strange in Infinity War if you've seen that. So when he woke up, he had seen it all before. Regardless of whether that theory is true, I think we will see the timelines join up at the end of this season, and the truth of what happened to be revealed when Strand, Charlotte Hale and Bernard make it to the newly drained Valley Beyond. And I'm still hoping that the last shot of the season is of the hosts emerging out into the real world. For if they aren't there, then where are they? Oh, and because we all love to speculate over random images from trailers, here's a shot of Charlotte Hale apparently looking at a host version of herself. Feel free to speculate about what's going on there in the comments below. If you're enjoying my Westworld content, you may also like my Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire videos. Please do check them out on my channel page, and do subscribe here if you enjoyed this video. As I said, please do also check out my Patreon page if you're interested in supporting me make more videos like this, or if you want access to some exclusive audio content. My Patreon community is what allows me to keep doing this. Thanks for watching. That's all for this time. I'll see you again soon.